I'm Callista. And let me tell you something. Being underestimated is one thing, but being erased from your own success? That's a whole different level of betrayal. For years, I poured everything into building my family's company. Late nights, endless sacrifices, turning it from a struggling startup into a $60 million empire. But when the company finally took off, my sister called me useless and took everything I built. My own father backed her. They thought I would walk away quietly, but they forgot one thing. I was the reason Vaytech existed in the first place. The moment they turned their backs on me, I made a choice. If they wanted to push me out, they would have to watch me take everything back. I stared at the screen in disbelief, my fingers frozen above my keyboard as the words coming from my sister's lips echoed in my ears. The sleek, polished conference backdrop framed Sienna perfectly. She looked radiant under the soft glow of the spotlights, exuding the kind of effortless confidence that made people believe whatever she said. And with strategic leadership, we transformed Vaytech into a powerhouse of innovation, she declared, flashing a knowing smile at the audience. When I took over key initiatives, we were struggling to compete. Now, we're not just surviving, we're leading. My stomach turned. I had spent a decade building this company from the ground up. I had written the algorithms that powered our software, closed the early deals, stayed up endless nights refining our systems while she was off chasing a corporate career. But today, in front of millions, she had erased me from my own legacy. Next to her, Magnus, our father and the founder of Vaytech, sat with an approving nod, his hands folded in his lap as if to say, "She's right. This is the truth." The truth. That word used to mean something in our family. It used to mean something to him. The room around me blurred as the audience applauded. News outlets were already running the headline, "Sienna Rourke, the visionary behind Vaytech's rise." I clenched my fists, not a single mention of my name. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. Rebecca Holloway's voice came through the speaker, laced with frustration. "Tell me you saw that." I exhaled sharply. "Oh, I saw it. She just took credit for everything. And your father, he just let her." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "I know." Rebecca hesitated, lowering her voice. "You have to respond. If you don't—" "I need to think," I cut her off, my voice sharper than intended. "I can't react emotionally." There was a pause. Then a sigh. "Fine, but don't wait too long. The longer this stands, the more people believe it." I ended the call and checked my messages. Lucas, Vaytech's CFO, had sent a short but urgent text. "You need to get ahead of this, before it's too late." My jaw tightened as I scrolled down to Magnus's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. I pressed it. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. I set the phone down, the weight in my chest pressing heavier. He wasn't just ignoring the situation. He was ignoring me. That evening, I walked into the restaurant feeling like an outsider in my own family. The dim golden lighting reflected off polished mahogany tables, the clink of silverware, and low murmurs of conversation filling the air. At the head of the table, Magnus sat beside Sienna, a proud expression on his face. Lorraine, our mother, adjusted the napkin in her lap, glancing at me with quiet concern. Sienna smirked as I took my seat. "Glad you could make it," she said smoothly, sipping her wine. I forced a polite smile. "Wouldn't miss it." The waiter poured a fresh round of drinks, and for a moment, the conversation floated around market trends, investments, upcoming expansions. Business as usual, but I wasn't here for small talk. I turned to Sienna. "I saw your interview today." She tilted her head. "Oh? What did you think?" I met her gaze. "I think you left something out." She barely blinked. "Did I?" "Yes." I set my glass down. "You forgot to mention the part where I built the software, where I negotiated the first contracts, where I worked 14-hour days to turn Vaytech into what it is." Sienna let out a soft chuckle. "Callista, come on. Everyone knows you're brilliant. But leadership isn't just about tech. It's about vision, strategy. People need a face they can trust. My fingers curled into my palm. And you think that's you? She shrugged, feigning innocence. I didn't say that. But, well, perception is everything. Magnus cleared his throat, placing a hand on my mother's arm as if to silence any further protest. Let's not make this dinner about business, he said lightly, though his tone left no room for debate. I turned to him, searching for something, anything that resembled support. Dad, you know what I did for this company. His expression didn't change. Sienna's doing a great job, that's what matters. The words knocked the air from my lungs. That's what matters. Not fairness, not truth, not the decade of sacrifice I had poured into Vatek. Sienna leaned back, satisfied. I swallowed back the bitterness rising in my throat. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I placed my napkin on the table, pushing my chair back. You're right, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. Let's not talk about business. I stood, ignoring the questioning look from my mother. Leaving already? Sienna mused, amusement laced in her voice. I shot her a cool look. I have work to do. Then I turned and walked away, my head high, even as the weight of their betrayal settled like stone in my chest. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photograph on the bookshelf. It was from Vatek's early days, Magnus, Sienna, and me, standing in front of our first office space. I remembered how proud I'd been back then, how I had believed, naively, that family meant something in business. Now I knew better. I opened my laptop, pulling up Vatek's financial reports. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, I walked into the office, ready to face whatever came next. The weight of last night's dinner still sat heavy on my chest, but I refused to let it slow me down. The sleek, glass-paneled lobby of Vatek hummed with activity. Employees bustled past, their conversations hushed, eyes flicking in my direction before quickly looking away. Something was off. I stepped toward the elevator, gripping my coffee cup a little tighter. My instincts had been sharpened over the years, and right now they were screaming at me that something was wrong. Before I could press the button, Rebecca appeared, her expression tense. Callista! One look at her face, and my stomach clenched. There's an emergency board meeting happening right now. She hesitated before adding, without you. My grip tightened on the cup. What? She lowered her voice. Sienna called it. No one told you? No one had told me anything. I turned sharply, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I strode toward the executive wing. My pulse pounded in my ears. The walls of Vatek had never felt suffocating before, but now they closed in like a trap. I pushed through the heavy doors of the boardroom without knocking. The room fell silent. Sienna stood at the head of the long oak table, her manicured hands resting on polished wood. She was in control, fully in her element. Around her, the board members sat in stiff silence. Magnus was there too, his face unreadable. Sienna's lips curved into a knowing smile. Callista, I was just about to call you in. I glanced at the papers on the table. It was already done. Whatever they had decided, whatever power move she had made, was already sealed in ink. I folded my arms, forcing my voice to stay even. What's going on? Sienna tilted her head. Vatek has grown beyond its startup phase. We need a leader who understands business strategy at the highest level, someone with real corporate expertise. My pulse spiked. And you think that's you? Nathan Pierce, one of the board members, and apparently a man now fully in Sienna's pocket, cleared his throat. The board has already voted, Callista. You're being transitioned out of leadership. The air left my lungs. I turned to my father. Dad? Magnus exhaled slowly, looking away. Maybe this is for the best, Callista. There it was. The final blow. I had spent years building this company. I had sacrificed everything, my time, my relationships, my sanity, to bring Vatek to where it was. And now, with a few well-timed moves, Sienna had taken it all. I forced myself to straighten. I wouldn't let them see me break. What exactly is my position now? Sienna leaned back, her voice dripping with feigned sympathy. You can stay on as a senior consultant. Your technical skills are still valuable, just not in leadership. My nails dug into my palm. Not in leadership. The humiliation settled deep. It wasn't just about the title. It was about being erased. Again. I glanced around the table. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Others, like Nathan, were smug. But no one spoke for me. Fine. I turned on my heel and walked out without another word. Back in my office, I closed the door behind me, breathing heavily. Rebecca and Lucas entered a moment later. Their eyes were filled with concern. Lucas was the first to speak. Are you okay? I wasn't. But I wouldn't say that. I let out a slow breath. Pack up my things. Rebecca's eyes widened. Callista, you don't have to. I'm not giving Sienna the satisfaction of dragging this out. They hesitated, then nodded. As I gathered the last of my personal belongings, I turned one final time to look at the view from my office window. Seattle's skyline stretched out before me, the city alive and thriving. They thought they had won. They thought I was finished. But as I gripped the steering wheel of my car, my mind was already racing. If they thought I was done, they were dead wrong. The invitation arrived that evening, a heavy, cream-colored envelope embossed with gold lettering. It was for Magnus's 70th birthday, a lavish event hosted at one of Seattle's most exclusive hotels. And of course, it was orchestrated by none other than Sienna. Rebecca leaned against my kitchen counter, skimming the details with a scoff. You know exactly what this is. I tossed the envelope onto the table. Yeah, a spectacle. She's setting you up, Rebecca warned. This isn't about Magnus. It's about making you irrelevant in front of every important person in the city. I knew she was right. Skipping it would be easy, but walking away would be giving her exactly what she wanted. And I refused to do that. I picked up the invitation again, running my fingers over the embossed seal. I'm going! Rebecca exhaled in frustration. Callista! I won't cause a scene, but I won't let her erase me either. She shook her head, muttering, I hope you know what you're doing. I didn't, but I'd figure it out. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, the air thick with expensive perfume and hushed conversations. Waiters in crisp black suits weaved through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne. Sienna was at the center of it all, laughing effortlessly, basking in the attention. Magnus stood beside her, surrounded by business executives and industry leaders. The room was filled with the kind of people who shaped companies with a handshake, who decided fates over a glass of bourbon. The moment I stepped inside, the whispers began. I walked through the crowd, chin high, shoulders squared, refusing to acknowledge the stolen glances and speculative murmurs. Sienna spotted me, her eyes lighting up with something I couldn't quite place. Anticipation, amusement, maybe both. She made her way over, her wineglass poised elegantly between her fingers. Glad you could make it, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. I wouldn't miss Dad's big night, I replied smoothly. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good, because tonight's going to be memorable. I held her gaze. I don't doubt it. She let out a soft chuckle, like she was in on some private joke. Then, with one last knowing glance, she disappeared back into the crowd. A knot twisted in my stomach. Something was about to happen. The clinking of a glass silenced the room. Sienna stood at the front of the ballroom, her expression radiant as she addressed the crowd. Magnus sat beside her, a glass of scotch in hand, watching with quiet approval. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate our father, she began, her voice smooth, practiced. Magnus Rourke is more than just a businessman. He's a visionary, a mentor, a leader. The room erupted in applause. I folded my arms, waiting. But tonight, she continued, her eyes scanning the crowd before locking onto mine, we also look toward the future. A hush fell over the room. As we celebrate Dad's legacy, I think it's time to share some exciting news about Vatek. My breath caught. The company needs strong leadership, and as CEO, I am committed to carrying that vision forward without distraction. I felt the world tilt slightly. Sienna's gaze never left mine as she delivered the final blow. Moving forward, I will be taking full executive control of Vatek as its sole leader. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I stood frozen as the cameras flashed, catching every stunned reaction, every whisper exchanged between guests. This wasn't just an announcement. It was a statement, a carefully crafted public execution of my role in the company. Magnus remained silent, his approval clear in the way he raised his glass. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay still, to absorb every detail, every smug glance, every strategic move she had just played. I wasn't just removed. I was humiliated. And Sienna knew it. I felt her watching me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to lash out, to storm out in disgrace. Instead, I took a steady breath and walked forward. I reached Magnus's table, set a small wrapped gift in front of him, and leaned in close. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said quietly. "Hope you enjoy the empire you just handed to her." Then I turned and walked out. The murmurs swelled behind me, but I didn't look back, not once. I stepped into the cool night air, gripping my purse tightly as I made my way to my car. Sienna had won this round, but she wouldn't win the war. The first thing I did the next morning was dig into Vatek's financial reports. And that's when I found it, the smoking gun. Sitting in my apartment, the soft hum of the city outside barely registered as my eyes scanned the files spread across my desk. My laptop screen glowed with spreadsheets, transaction logs, and legal documents that should have made sense, except they didn't. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was reading too much into things, still raw from last night's humiliation. But the more I dug, the more the numbers screamed at me. Something was wrong. Profits had been diverted. Private equity discussions had taken place under the radar. Legal clauses had been carefully worded to conceal their true intent. And then I found the name. Ethan Wells. A corporate predator. A man who didn't just buy companies. He gutted them, stripping them for every last profitable piece before discarding the remains. My stomach twisted. Sienna wasn't just consolidating power. She was preparing to sell Vatek out from under me. Worse, Magnus was backing her. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I drove across the city to my parents' house, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter with each mile. The betrayal was no longer just professional. It was personal. Lorraine answered the door, her face etched with worry the moment she saw me. "Callista," she said softly, "I was wondering when you'd come." I stepped inside, my pulse drumming in my ears. "How long have you known?" she sighed, shutting the door behind me. "Your father didn't want me to say anything," I scoffed. "Of course he didn't." We moved to the living room, where she perched on the edge of the couch, wringing her hands. "Magnus believes this is the best move for the company. He thinks Ethan Wells can take Vatek to the next level." I let out a sharp laugh. "Ethan Wells doesn't take companies to the next level, Mom. He dismantles them." Lorraine flinched but didn't argue. I leaned forward, my voice tight. Did Dad even fight for me? Or did he just hand Sienna the keys and tell her to lock me out? She looked away, her silence answering the question. I sat back, exhaling slowly. "I can't let this happen." Lorraine's gaze snapped to mine. "Please don't make this a war, Callista. Your father believes he's doing the right thing." I shook my head. He's doing what's easy. There's a difference." Her lips pressed together, her eyes pleading. "You could start over, walk away from this and build something new." I stood. "This is mine. I already built it once, and I'll be damned if I let Sienna burn it to the ground." Lorraine didn't stop me as I left. She knew. There was no turning back now. That night, I met Lucas Carter in the shadowed corner of a quiet restaurant. He looked uneasy, glancing around as he slid into the booth across from me. "This isn't a good idea." I ignored his nerves. "The deal isn't finalized yet, is it?" He hesitated. "Number, but it will be soon." "How soon?" "A matter of days." A sharp pang of urgency shot through me. Lucas lowered his voice. "Ethan Wells has been circling for months. Sienna's been playing the long game, making sure everything lines up perfectly before closing the sale." I clenched my jaw. "She's selling Vaytech like it's a used car." Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what you're planning, Callista, but if you want to stop this, you need leverage. You need something bigger than just knowing the deal exists." I nodded. "Then I guess I'd better find it." I returned home just before midnight, exhaustion tugging at my limbs, but my mind refused to rest. I poured a drink, letting the ice clink against the glass as I stared out at the city skyline. I had spent years thinking of myself as an innovator, a builder, someone who created solutions. But tonight, I wasn't a builder. I was a strategist. Sienna thought she had outplayed me, that I would fold, pack up, and leave quietly. She didn't realize I wasn't the same woman she had blindsided in that boardroom. I pulled up my private files, records, patents, assets she didn't even know existed. My fingers hovered over my keyboard, a slow smirk curling at my lips. "You want to play dirty, Sienna?" I whispered. "Let's see who wins." I closed my laptop and picked up my phone. The first call would go to Nathan Pierce, the man Sienna thought she had in her pocket. Nathan hesitated when he answered, but I didn't give him a chance to speak first. "We need to talk, now." There was a long pause before he exhaled sharply. "Callista, this isn't a good time." I ignored that. "The conference room at the Oxford, 30 minutes. He started to protest, but I hung up before he could make an excuse. By the time I arrived at the hotel's private lounge, Nathan was already there, shifting nervously in his chair. He looked like a man who had a lot to lose. I sat down across from him, pulling a folder from my bag and sliding it across the table. "I assume you recognize these." His face paled as he glanced at the pages. Financial transactions, private communication logs, a web of bribes and promises, all leading back to Sienna. His fingers twitched as he pushed the folder away. "This doesn't prove anything." I leaned in. "Cut the act, Nathan. I know Sienna has been buying board members for months. The only thing I don't know is how much she paid you to betray me." He swallowed hard, but his eyes flickered with something close to guilt. "You can't win this," he muttered. "She's covered every angle. The board is already on her side." I gave him a slow, measured smile. "Then it's time to change the game." I didn't waste time. By the afternoon, I was standing outside Sienna's office, my fingers tapping against the manila folder I had brought with me. The assistant gave me a wary glance. "Ms. Rourke is in a meeting." "I'll wait." The door opened moments later, and Sienna appeared, a satisfied smirk on her face. Until she saw me. "Let me guess," she drawled. "You're here to whine about your tragic downfall?" I stepped inside without being invited, dropping the file onto her desk. She barely glanced at it before crossing her arms. "And? You think this scares me?" I met her gaze without flinching. "If you keep pushing, I'll make sure the entire boardroom turns against you." Sienna laughed. "The board?" "Oh, Callista, the board loves me." "Only as long as they think you can protect them," I countered. "What happens when they realize you're the reason Vaytech is on the verge of collapse?" For the first time, her smirk wavered. I didn't need her to react. Not yet. I had planted the seed of doubt, and that was enough. That evening, Magnus called. "Dinner, my place, now." I should have ignored him, but part of me still wanted to believe he had some decency left. When I arrived, Lorraine greeted me at the door, her face tight with unspoken worry. Magnus sat at the dining table, a glass of scotch in front of him. "You need to stop." I let out a breathless laugh. "That's why you called me here?" I'm trying to keep this family together, he said. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. You don't get to say that. Not after what you did. He ran a hand down his face. It's just business, Callista. The words snapped something inside me. No, I said quietly, my voice like steel. It's my life's work. It's my name, my legacy, my future. You handed everything to Sienna before I even had a chance to fight for it. Magnus sighed, rubbing his temple. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I pushed my chair back, standing slowly. Then I'll handle it like business. And I promise you, you're not going to like the outcome. Lorraine flinched as I turned and walked out, but she didn't stop me. She knew nothing could. Back at my apartment, Rebecca, Lucas, and Samuel were already waiting. I placed my laptop on the table, flipping open the screen. Sienna thinks she has this locked down. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Does she? I met his gaze, my lips curling into a knowing smile. Not anymore. I took a breath, letting the moment settle. Tomorrow, we start tearing her empire apart. The first move was already in motion. I just had to watch it play out. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating aggressively against the nightstand. Rebecca's name flashed across the screen. Turn on the news, she said the moment I answered, her voice tight with urgency. A cold sensation crept down my spine as I grabbed the remote and flipped to the business channel. My own face stared back at me from the screen, but the headline made my stomach turn. Disgraced former CEO, Callista Rourke's questionable leadership led to Vatek's instability. I sat up straighter, eyes scanning the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Internal sources say Callista Rourke failed to adapt to market trends, leading to stagnation in innovation. Employees question her management style. Was she ever really fit to lead? Every line hit like a hammer. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the news feeds. It was everywhere. Articles, opinion pieces, tweets dissecting my failure. Every tech blog, every finance column. It was all the same. Sienna had done it. She had launched a full-blown smear campaign, feeding the media false narratives to bury me. I clenched my jaw, my blood simmering beneath my skin. Fine. She wanted a war? She'd get one. By noon, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let Sienna control the story. If she wanted to drag my name through the mud, she was going to have to look me in the eye while she did it. I picked up my phone and dialed Lucas. Where's Sienna right now? Speaking at the Northwest Tech Summit, he answered. Panel discussion on leadership and corporate ethics. I almost laughed at the irony. Get me a seat, I said. The conference room was packed. Industry elites, reporters, executives. All eyes were fixed on the stage where Sienna sat, poised and confident. I stood at the back, waiting. Sienna was mid-sentence when I made my move. When the panel opened for audience questions, I stepped forward. Callista Rourke, the moderator announced, looking surprised as the room collectively turned toward me. Sienna's expression faltered for just a second before she forced her signature smirk. I took the mic, keeping my tone calm and steady. Since my sister is talking about transparency, maybe she can explain why she manipulated the media with false narratives. The room tensed. Reporters sat up straighter, pens poised. Camera operators zoomed in. Sienna's fingers curled slightly on the armrest of her chair, but she didn't let the mask slip. I'm not sure what you mean, she said smoothly. I held up my phone, where an article headline glowed from the screen. Multiple sources, I said, arching a brow. Care to name them? Or do they only exist in your PR team's imagination? A few murmurs spread through the audience. Sienna's jaw tensed. I don't control the media. Don't you? I tilted my head. You do control Vatek's communications team, don't you? The tension in the room was electric. For the first time in this fight, Sienna wasn't controlling the narrative. The moment the panel ended, I followed her backstage. She stormed into the green room, slamming the door shut behind her. What the hell was that? I crossed my arms. That was me reminding you that I'm not going anywhere. Her nostrils flared. You just made a fool of yourself in front of the entire industry. No, I said, stepping closer. I made you look like a liar in front of the entire industry. She scoffed. You can't win, Callista. No one cares about the truth. They care about the story that gets the most clicks. Then I'll give them a better story. Sienna's confidence wavered for half a second before she straightened her shoulders. You should have stayed out of my way. Or what? I shot back. You'll try to destroy me again? The silence between us was razor sharp. Security stepped in before things could escalate further, ushering us to separate exits. I didn't care. I had done what I came to do. That night, back in my office, I gathered my team. Rebecca, Lucas, Samuel, all of them ready for whatever came next. I placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents, proof of Sienna's backdoor deals, her manipulation tactics, her underhanded schemes. Lucas glanced at them, then up at me. You're really going after her now, aren't you? I met his gaze, my voice steady. Now, let's make her regret ever underestimating me. And the first step? Taking away the one thing Sienna thought was untouchable. Vatex core software. I leaned back in my chair, fingers drumming against the polished oak desk, as Lucas finished going over the final details. It's airtight, he said, pushing a set of documents toward me. Altiora Systems owns the software outright. The licensing contract with Vatex was never renewed. Sienna either didn't notice or was too busy playing the media to care. I picked up the papers, skimming through the legal jargon that confirmed what I already knew. Sienna had made a critical mistake. I exhaled slowly, a smirk playing at the corner of my lips. Then let's remind her who really built this company. Rebecca, sitting across from me, raised an eyebrow. You know this is going to cause absolute chaos, right? That's the point, I said smoothly. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. At precisely 9 a.m., the first call came in. I watched the chaos unfold from the comfort of my office, sipping my coffee as the first ripple of panic spread across Vatex headquarters. The company's entire infrastructure, billing systems, client data access, internal management software, suddenly went dark. Within minutes, phone lines were jammed. Emails flooded in from frantic executives. Investors demanded explanations. By 9:10 a.m., Sienna stormed into Vatex IT department, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floors. What the hell is going on? She snapped. Technicians scrambled to explain, but the answer was staring her right in the face. A single notification blinked ominously on the main server screen. License agreement with Altiora Systems expired. Access revoked. Sienna's face went pale. No, she muttered, frantically typing at the keyboard, as if sheer willpower could override the system lockout. But it was done. She had lost control of the one thing that had made Vatex valuable, and I was the only person who could fix it. By noon, the boardroom was in a state of complete chaos. The emergency meeting had been called, and for once, Sienna wasn't in control. Board members argued, their voices overlapping. Magnus sat in the corner, silent, his hands clasped in front of him. Sienna stood at the center of it all, her confidence shaken for the first time. We can fix this, she insisted, but the desperation in her voice was obvious. Nathan, the same man who had once dismissed me, turned to her sharply. How? How do you fix this? He gestured toward the report stacked in front of him. Do you even realize what just happened? We've lost millions in revenue today alone. A heavy silence fell over the room. Then a board member spoke up. Get Callista in here. Now I took my time. By the time I arrived at Vatex offices, the energy had shifted. No smug looks, no whispers. Just silence as I walked through the halls, my presence commanding attention in a way it never had before. When I entered the boardroom, all eyes turned to me. Sienna, standing at the head of the table, was barely holding it together. She squared her shoulders, trying to summon the arrogance she wore like armor. If this is some kind of stunt, I held up a hand, silencing her. Let's not waste time, I said evenly. You want my software? Then you'll meet my terms. A murmur ran through the board. Sienna scoffed, folding her arms. You think you can just hold this company hostage? No, I said, tilting my head. I know I can. Her expression darkened. Across the table, Magnus exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something close to respect in his eyes. Sienna, however, was shaking with barely contained fury. You think you can waltz in here and demand— I leaned forward, my voice firm. You have 24 hours to decide, or I walk away for good. The next morning, the choice would be clear. Vatek belonged to me, or it belonged to no one. I walked into the boardroom with steady steps, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my face unreadable. The room was tense, the air thick with uncertainty. Sienna was already there, pacing near the head of the table, her nails digging into her palm. Her confidence from days before had eroded into something fragile, something desperate. The board members sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact with her. Even Nathan Pierce, the man who once took her bribes without hesitation, sat with his arms folded, his expression stony. The numbers had spoken for themselves. Vatek was bleeding, clients were in a panic, investors were pulling out, and the stock had plummeted overnight. And the reason? Sienna. Her recklessness, her arrogance, her failure. I took my seat across from her, meeting her furious gaze with nothing but calm. The chairman cleared his throat. We all know why we're here. His voice was heavy, his words deliberate. This company is on the verge of collapse, and we need to make a decision, now. Sienna sat up straighter, forcing a smile. We can recover from this. I have a plan. Nathan cut her off, his voice sharp. A plan? You mean the same kind of plan that got us into this mess? He shook his head. We need leadership that knows what they're doing. Callista is the only one who can fix this. The words struck like a hammer. Sienna opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, she realized. She had lost. I turned my gaze to Magnus. For once, he looked tired. The weight of his choices, his blind loyalty, the empire he had so carelessly handed over to Sienna, it all sat on his shoulders, dragging him down. The silence stretched between us. Then, finally, he sighed. I thought you were ready, he said, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. He didn't look at me. He looked at Sienna. But you weren't. You let your pride destroy everything. Sienna inhaled sharply, shaking her head in disbelief. Dad? I trusted you, Magnus continued, his tone edged with disappointment. And you failed. Tears welled in Sienna's eyes. No, you can't do this. His gaze hardened. I already have. He turned to the board, straightening his shoulders. Callista takes full control, effective immediately. The gavel came down. The decision was made. Sienna didn't move. She sat frozen, staring at nothing, as the world crumbled around her. I watched as the color drained from her face, her lips trembling. Then, suddenly, she shot up from her chair, her breath ragged. You ruined me! Before I could react, she lunged. Her nails scraped against my arm before security stepped in, grabbing her by the shoulders and pulling her back. She thrashed, her hair wild, her voice cracking as she screamed. This was supposed to be mine, she sobbed. I did everything right. I was supposed to win. Her wails echoed in the cold, sterile boardroom. No one moved. No one defended her. Not even Magnus. Sienna collapsed to her knees, her cries raw, her shoulders shaking violently. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anger toward her. I just felt nothing. Magnus approached me as I gathered my things. His face had aged a decade overnight. His hands, once steady, now trembled at his sides. You were always the smarter one, he murmured. I should have seen it sooner. I met his tired gaze. I had waited my entire life to hear those words. And now, they meant nothing. I nodded once. That was all he was getting from me. Then I turned, walking out of the boardroom, out of my father's shadow, out of my past, stepping into my rightful place. As I entered my office, I exhaled slowly. The war was over. But was the victory worth it? A week later, I found myself staring at an unopened gift, a birthday present I never got to give Magnus. It sat on my desk, wrapped in silver paper, the ribbon slightly crushed from being tossed aside. I had bought it weeks ago, back when I still believed there was a chance, however small, that my father would see me, acknowledge me, maybe even be proud of me. But that moment never came. Now it was just another relic of the past. Vaytech was finally stabilizing under my leadership. Employees walked the halls with cautious relief, knowing the chaos of Sienna's reign was over. The panic had subsided. Clients returned. The company's stock was already showing signs of recovery. Lucas leaned against the doorframe of my office, arms crossed. "The numbers are looking solid. Investors are satisfied. Looks like you pulled off the impossible." Rebecca grinned. "You saved the company, boss. You should be celebrating." I nodded, forcing a small smile. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was exhaustion. I glanced back at the unopened gift. Winning didn't erase the loss. I visited my mother for the first time since the fallout. Lorraine opened the door slowly, as if she had been expecting me, but wasn't sure how to welcome me. "Come in," she said softly. The house was quiet. No signs of Magnus. No lingering echoes of old arguments. "He's retired," Lorraine said, answering my unspoken question. "He barely leaves the house." I exhaled. "And Sienna?" She hesitated. "Gone. She left Seattle. I don't know where." I wasn't surprised. Sienna had built her identity on being the face of success. Now that she had lost everything, she had nowhere to hide except in obscurity. Lorraine looked at me, her eyes filled with something deeper than sadness. "You proved them all wrong," she said. "But was it worth it?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure myself. The email came the next morning. Subject: Invitation to speak, Brentwood Business School, Sienna's alma mater. They wanted me to deliver a keynote speech at their upcoming graduation ceremony. The topic? The power of underestimated leaders. I leaned back in my chair, reading the words again. It was poetic, in a way. I accepted, not out of spite, not to rub it in, but because success was the only closure I needed. The skyline stretched before me, the city bathed in golden morning light. I stood at the window of my new office, watching the world move forward. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I thought back to the girl I used to be, the one who spent nights coding in a tiny apartment, building something no one believed in. I closed my eyes, whispering to the ghost of my past self. "We made it." Then I turned away from the past, stepping into the future. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. For years, I let others define my worth. I let my father's favoritism, my sister's betrayals, and the doubts of those around me chip away at what I knew I was capable of. But here's the truth. No one is coming to hand you the life you deserve. You have to take it. You have to fight for it. This story wasn't just about business. It was about standing your ground when the world tells you to step aside. It was about resilience, about refusing to let anyone erase your contributions, and about knowing your own value, whether or not anyone else sees it. So let me ask you, have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had someone tell you that you weren't good enough, smart enough, or strong enough? How did you respond? Because in the end, it's not about what they say, it's about what you do next. If this story resonated with you, if it struck a chord, let me know. Drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to fight for what's yours, I want to hear your story. Let's connect, share, and lift each other up. And of course, if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and powerful, hit that subscribe button. Your journey isn't over, and neither is ours. Let's keep going.